Chapter 2 An Errand 15-year-old Aloysius Kosygin flexed his aching fingers, but only for a precious split second. Keeper Isolde stopped her history lectures for nothing and no one, so her students had to be quick with their quills. Aloysius could hear Garrett's soft, even breathing behind him. He dared a quick glance at his friend and rolled his eyes. The little taffer was asleep. Though it's not as if it matters for him, thought Aloysius, with a twinge of jealousy. Garrett was a few years younger than Aloysius, not to mention nearly all of their classmates, never seemed to take any notes, and rarely, if ever, paid attention to the instructors. And yet, he was ranked as one of the top students in the entirety of the compound. Aloysius was also ranked as high, but he had gotten there by near fanatical study habits. Garrett just seemed to glide through his studies with hardly any effort, a fact that drove Aloysius mad with frustration. It defied all logic to think that the two were as thick as thieves. Aloysius had lost most of his snobbiness and had developed a sort of witty charm that made him well-liked among all of the students. Garrett remained taciturn and sardonic, but Aloysius found him to be good company. They could both recall some arguments they had had a couple of years back, but neither boy could remember quite what it was over. In the end, they would both agree that it probably wasn't that important anyway. Kosygin! Isolde's razor-blade voice sliced the quiet in two and made Aloysius jump. Would you mind telling the rest of us what you find so fascinating about the window panes? To his horror, Aloysius realized he had been staring out the window for at least the past 5 minutes. He flushed a bright red that nearly matched the color of his hair and mumbled, nothing, ma'am. Well, with that issue out of the way, perhaps you can pay attention, Yes, Keeper Isolde. Isolde gave Aloysius one last, withering glance before returning to her lecturing. Aloysius heard Garrett snicker softly and attempted to kick the other boy. This only made Garrett snort with laughter as he moved his feet out of Aloysius's way. How do you do it? Aloysius demanded after class. Do what? Garrett asked innocently. You were asleep and Isolde never even noticed. Well, I woke myself up when she was looking my way. That's a load if I ever heard one. If you were asleep, how could you have known where she was looking? Hey, is that Diane over there? Aloysius obligingly turned his head to look, only to turn back and find that, predictably, Garrett had disappeared into the small throng of dismissed students. Garrett huffed in frustration as his arrow hit distinctly off course. He told himself it was the slight wind, but even then he knew that wasn't true. He lied all the time, and knew it. Like that morning when Aloysius asked him how he managed to sleep in Isolde's class without getting caught. The truth was that he hadn't been asleep at all. Rather, he had been listening. All he had to do was close his eyes, and the dull little room offered up a symphony of different sounds. The soft breathing of the students, the steady beat of his own heart, quill scratching rapidly against parchment, and above it all was Isolde's thin voice. She had been on the subject of immigration to the city. Before Artemis brought him to the compound, Garrett had lived near the docks, if you could call huddling between some crates at night living. In any case, this meant foreigners were a regular sight for him. They came from everywhere, so it seemed. Burly Northmen with white or red blonde hair and gruff accents, or the smaller, lither Southerners with their olive skin and finely chiseled features. As a young boy, he had often looked as carefully as he could at the faces of the Southerners, trying to detect a familial resemblance. Isit the beggar had once told him that he must be the child of some southern whore.
"'Cause of your coloring."
Garrett realized that Isit had meant the remark as something of an insult, but had taken the deeper meaning to heart. Maybe he had come from somewhere. If he had come from somewhere, that meant he belonged somewhere. Maybe he did belong among the dark-haired Southerners. But no, in the end he belonged here, among the keepers. Yes, that was right. But, he thought, a little uneasily, if I belonged here, then why do I miss that so much? He didn't mean the cold, or the hunger, or the grime, but just the feeling of being in the middle of it all. He had been at the compound for a little over 2 years, and in that time, his trips to the surrounding city were very few and always accompanied by Artemis. The lack of open space was enough to make him feel nervous. Come on, Garrett. You're a big boy. Get used to it. You can get used to anything. Garrett nocked another arrow and drew back the bowstring with a little more force than was necessary. He fired quickly, his arrow missing the target and burying itself in the wooden wall behind it at an awkward angle. You're trying too hard. Relax and do it again. Garrett resisted the urge to jump. Artemis had managed to sneak up on him again. The wind's a faint breeze, Garrett. Now, try again. Artemis folded his arms and gave Garrett a gently commanding look. Garrett sighed and nocked another arrow and pulled back the string. Aiming carefully, he loosed the arrow, which hit an inch or so left of the target's center. Garrett grinned at his mentor, who promptly handed him another arrow. Garrett raised an eyebrow, but took the arrow and fitted it to the string and took aim. Now, stop, Artemis said suddenly. Garrett froze, resenting the order. Holding back the string of a longbow for long was no mean feat. You must see the arrow hitting home first, before making arbitrary decisions. Archery requires no small amount of strategy, so make your decision first, then fire. Garrett held back a frustrated sigh, but did as he was told. Taking into account the breeze and the distance, he aimed and fired. This time, the arrow hit dead center. Very good, Artemis intoned. Garrett knew this would probably be the highest praise he would ever get from Artemis, and looked appropriately grateful by giving a short nod. You are very distracted today, continued Artemis. May I ask why? Garrett shrugged. I was just thinking about going out. You are out, Artemis said, gesturing to the small practice yard. Garrett scowled. For a man who could practically read his thoughts, Artemis could be annoyingly oblivious sometimes. I meant getting out of the compound for a while. Just seeing a bit of the city. The city, Artemis repeated. He had little fondness for the bustling metropolis, preferring the quiet of the keeper's library. This city can easily make one lose their balance. I know, but it's been over a month since I was last outside the compound or the library. You've been spending very little time in the library, to my knowledge. Hey, I get the work done. Look, all I want is to just, I don't know, take a walk or something, but I can't leave without your saying so. I swear I wouldn't do anything. Garrett went over to the target and started pulling the arrows out. So you say. What? Do you think I'm lying? Garrett gave the arrow in the wall a vicious tug, almost causing it to splinter, but it was stuck fast. Garrett, I do not think you are lying. Artemis made a placating gesture and joined Garrett by the target. But you cannot pretend you don't have a tendency to forget your obligations. He pulled a pocket knife from somewhere in his robes and pried the arrow out of the wood. I'm not talking about a major errand. Just a walk is all. Garrett. Fine then. Keeper Master Artemis, would you please grant me permission to journey the city unaccompanied? Said Garrett, finishing with an ironic half-bow. Very clever, Artemis responded with a raised brow. If you wish, Garrett, you may go. But I won't let this be a mere frivolity. I want you to do something for me.